Hello guys, these 5 mistakes are costing you a ton of time in Diablo 4. They're wasting tens or hundreds of hours even in some cases, and millions of gold. But avoiding these 5 mistakes are going to save you a lot of time over anything else. First, we're going to talk about gear upgrading mistakes, and this is a big one because a lot of people are wasting a ton of money and a ton of time trying to upgrade their gear when they really should not. So from level 0 to level 50, you should not be upgrading any of this gear at all. You shouldn't be really putting any aspects on it. Like, if you just want to play the game and enjoy it, feel free. So from 0 to level 50, do not upgrade this, do not imprint aspects on this gear because it's just a waste, unless you're having fun, of course. Ideally, from 0 to maybe level 40 or 50, depending on if you actually need gold or not, you want to salvage all of this gear all of the time. This is primarily because later on in the game, you need a lot of materials. As you can see here, when you go to your materials tab, a lot of these legendary upgrades will require certain materials to be able to upgrade that gear. Now you want to be able to stack on this as much as possible early in the game. And the reason for this being is because if you stack on it early in the game versus selling your equipment, selling a level 20 or 30 equipment gives you a certain amount of gold, but level 40, 50, or 60 equipment later on sells for way more gold than the lower level items. So it makes sense to salvage everything very early on, get all the materials that you need for the most part, and then once you start getting rares later in the game as you're higher level, sell them because they're worth a lot more money. Additionally, by salvaging all these items early, you get the ability of unlocking all of your transmogs very quickly. Now when it comes to your legendary gear, make sure you do not sell it. I repeat, do not ever sell it. If you do, Instead, what you want to do is, if you have a piece of legendary gear, you want to make sure you get the materials that are important for that gear, because you're going to need it later to upgrade your gear, and you're going to need a lot of it. So if you get a piece like this that's a legendary item, I recommend you turn on the advanced tooltip compare and the advanced tooltip information in the settings so you can see this. But if you don't get a good roll on this legendary piece of gear, you can see it's 2 to 4%, and I got 2%, and 10 to 20, and I got 10%. So I got the lowest possible rolls for this, and I don't need the aspect that's on this item anyways. You should go ahead and salvage it. Now, if you get a legendary item with an aspect on it that you know you don't need, and the gear is just bad, and you know you're never going to use it, make sure you just salvage it. Go ahead and salvage that. And you get the materials for that. Now, depending on the level of gear, you're going to get higher quality items, but always make sure to salvage your legendary gear instead of selling it. Another big mistake that I see people making, or just misunderstanding currently, is the quest and renown system. So ideally, there's a couple things when leveling a character that will benefit you tremendously, and one of these things is going to be your renown, but there's a very solid way to do your renown. Now again, from 0 to 50, we want to focus on the main quest line, so that way we can hit level 50. And once you hit level 50, the very first thing you want to do is start getting your renown region progress. So each region, for instance, is going to have these different renown sets. The first thing you want to focus on is getting the claimed sections of the first 3 on every single region possible, because each region you get a potion capacity for, and you get 2 skill points for completing each of those. So overall, that's 10 points and 10 extra potion capacity, which overall is a game changer. So you can see I still have some work to do, but you want to make sure you do that so that way you can have maxed out potion capacity as well as those additional skill points to make sure you max out your build to the fullest capability. Now, level 4 is pretty much useless. The ovals are great if you're trying to find a certain piece of gear, obviously, that has a certain aspect on it. But then you probably want to level to about 70 before you worry about maxing out each region. Since you do get 4 Paragon points for each region, that is a lot of Paragon points. But overall, from levels 50 to 70, they don't necessarily matter, so I would save that until then. Now, if you want to go ahead and max out your renown the fastest way possible, the best way to do this is going to be to grab all the waypoints, all the strongholds, because they're fairly easy. You don't have to necessarily discover all the areas, although I did. You can just do a couple of side dungeons, grab all of these altars of Lilith, and do about 10 to 15 side quests per each region is the best way to go ahead and max this out. Now, one important thing to note here is the altars of Lilith. If you collect them on one character, all of the altars you've collected will give the skill benefits to every single character that you have. And you can see here the bottom portion of each one of these areas. Each character gets those. So upon unlocking all the skill points, the potion capacity, etc., you want to make sure you do, again, these 3 at 50. So that way, in case you create a new character, they get all of those benefits as well. They get all the skill points, all the potion capacity, etc. And you can see when starting off a brand new character at level 1, I start with those 6 potions. Again, I also start with 6 available attribute points because I've already unlocked them through Renown. Now your character will show Renown available because you won't have it on this character, but all of these unlocks on the bottom will still all be here, as well as your horse that transfers over as well. So doing all this stuff on one character really unlocks the game for the other characters that you create. One additional tip to speed up your Renown process: make sure you do one section at a time. And I say this because you're able to complete a lot of side quests very quickly. So a lot of side quests, as you can see here, so you can see, depending on where you grab a side quest, a lot of side quests actually are in dungeons. So you can get the Renown points for completing the dungeon and the side quest itself. So basically you can go over here and dump and get rid of a lot of the side quests in these other regions. So that way you can max out and grab the max amount that you can from the region you're working on. For instance, Fractured Peaks for me. And you can see once I start getting these side quests, a lot of them are in dungeons, meaning when you do those, you're going to get the 20 Renown value for just doing the side quest, and 30 for doing the dungeon. Two birds in one stone. You get 50 every single time you do a dungeon if you do it this way, meaning you can max out this Renown very quickly once you get a lot of the other stuff already unlocked. The next mistake I see could easily save you tens or hundreds of hours on its own is using aspects properly. Now one of the things you definitely need to do at some point is go to your gameplay settings tab and turn on advanced tooltip compare and advanced tooltip information. You should always keep compare on because it compares gear for you. When you're trying to min-max your gear, turn on tooltip information. At the beginning of the game, it is a lot of information with the percentages being shown. So sometimes you can turn it off and turn it on just as needed. But to give you a quick 1-minute masterclass on aspects and why they're being used improperly is because essentially if you go to your collections tab, you have the Codex of Power. Now here you have a list full of all of the aspects that you have unlocked. These are the base aspects that you unlock from doing dungeons, such as one of these, and then you unlock that aspect. Once you completed this dungeon once, all of your characters unlock the ability to put this aspect on their gear. Now these aspects in particular, if we were to go to put this on a random piece of gear, you could select that Codex of Power that you have acquired by doing the dungeon. So you can see here I don't have any unlocked for this piece of gear, but if I did, you could be able to do that. And the main thing here is these aspects can be used infinitely over and over again. The only difference is it gives you the minimum roll possible. So as you can see on this legendary amulet, this aspect on it deals up to 27% damage, but the range, because we have that setting on, is 15 to 30%. That means I have rolled a 27% with the max being 30%, which is a very high roll. Now this is a random drop, and the way random drops work with aspects is they give you a random number or a random roll. So you can see the 27% is almost 30%. I'm pretty close to maxed out on the possible roll I could get for this gear. The difference between the Codex of Power aspects, which you can use infinitely, is if we found the same aspect in the Codex of Power, like I mentioned, it only gives you the minimal roll or the minimum percentage, meaning we would only get 15% flat. This is where you want to pay attention, because when you find legendary gear like this, or for instance like this ring, where the roll is from 20 to 30%, and I found a random item that gives me the max possible roll, you need to make sure when you find gear like that you're not necessarily going to wear, you need to keep this aspect because it's the max roll for that aspect. So you're just going to extract this aspect, and it's going to cost a decent amount of gold here, but you can see it's going to give me an aspect with that max roll on it. And so you want to make sure you do that so you can have that aspect here for later when you want to put it on a higher end game or higher tier piece of gear. Now one thing is these aspects that you extract can only be imprinted onto one single item, so make sure you don't waste it. Make sure you wait until you get after 50 or even after 70 to your end game gear, so that way you can use this max roll aspect on your gear, because again you can only use it one singular time versus the Codex of Power aspects that you can use infinitely. Now, as your item level rises for your gear, essentially an aspect that you extract at level 12 versus an aspect that you extract at level 70 may be different, because the percentages can increase depending on the level that the gear is. But for the most parts, your max roll aspects, you should keep them. And at level 50, if you have some aspects to put on gear, you can do that, but always try and save your max roll aspects for as long as you can. Now, the other big thing I see people kind of skipping out on a little bit is certain world events. You want to make sure you do these world events as much as possible. For instance, things you unlock like the Tree of Whispers. So some of the footage I'll show right now is specifically of the Helltide event. The Helltide event is great for getting a lot of legendaries. You can unlock a lot of legendaries during Helltide events. You can also get a lot of experience through doing Helltide events. You can also get a lot of experience through them when you gather in a party. So that is the primary thing you want to do. Once you start hitting level 50, once you see Helltide dungeons unlock, you want to start doing those very, very quickly. Another recommendation when you start a Helltide event, questing isn't actually locked in the region that you're doing it for. So one thing I'd recommend is starting side quests, so that way you can do them while you're doing the event, and it just knocks out 2 birds in 1 stone, and it's much, much quicker. Eventually, once you unlock nightmare dungeons, you want to start running those, but those are only a little bit later into the game. Some classes have a decent amount of specialization options in here, so take advantage of it. Initially, on your first character playthrough, you should start focusing on getting the horse, because it makes it that much easier to get around the map, almost 300% faster probably. So you need to go ahead and unlock the horse, and so you should prioritize starting the main missions in the campaign and completing them up until Act 4, and try to put side quests and stuff aside just until this point. And then once you have actually unlocked the horse, feel free to go back and start doing side quests and stuff. It's just so much faster when you have the horse available. That way you can move around the map quicker, and it makes the game just that much more enjoyable. The game dramatically opens up once you hit level 50. So although it's not a rush to get to level 50, getting to level 50 quicker has its bonuses in terms of much more powerful gear, Paragon points for skilling up your character, and additional things like nightmare dungeons and Helltide. Next is the specialization of each character, or the expertise. Now this depends on the type of character specifically, but each character has their own expertise. You want to make sure you fully understand and learn these, so that way you can get the biggest benefit out of them. So I didn't know this until the other day, but the Barbarian, for instance, has a weapon expertise that allows you to use a technique slot that applies that weapon's bonus to other weapons. So for instance, if you're using an axe and you equip the two-handed sword expertise, you will get the benefit normally from the two-handed axe, and you'll get the benefit from the two-handed sword. It's critical you set this up correctly and adjust it as needed throughout the game. Now obviously the game already kind of goes over this, but for a long time I made the mistake of not going in here and switching things when I would switch weapons or etc. So make sure you pay attention to this and get your benefits that you need to get for each class. Thanks guys, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, check out this video on the left or the right for anything Diablo 4, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Peace.